Mangwana ni malelepo fukenjani Kleklasvanave Africa. Welcome to Africa Good Morning, the news and current affairs show which remains your portal into Africa's most potent stories. We're going to be joined by Talent Gore as she delivers the Zimbabwe report, but prior to that, these are some of the top stories we'll be looking at. Kenya and Russia agree to end recruitment of Kenyans for Ukraine war. Somali forces continue campaign against Islamic State fighters in Puntland mountains. Madagascar transitional leader appoints financial intelligence chief as prime minister. Former elite police officer charged in South Africa whistleblower killing. Heavy rains flood Nairobi neighborhoods and disrupt traffic across the city. This is in Kenya. Africa's mineral wealth draws global attention, and this is amid U.S. rare earth shortage. DSTV 285, GOTV 25, oneup2.com, Network Media Hub, as well as NTVAFRIKA.MY.NA is where you can watch the show. My name is Ashwin Berry. Top stories shortly.
Namibia is a land of movement, with waves that never stop reaching forward. Here, adventure is not something we search for. It is something we are born into. In every corner of this country, creativity rises, from artists, from athletes, from dreamers. And when the world comes to explore Namibia, they discover something extraordinary. Because when sport moves people, creativity moves ideas, and tourism moves the world toward us. Something powerful happens. A platform where movement meets imagination, where industries connect, where opportunity grows, where Namibia's next chapter begins. Welcome to the Creative Sport Tourism Expo. Exhibit, partner, experience. Creative Sport Tourism.
Getting into our top stories, we start off in Kenya, where the Foreign Minister Musalia Mudavadi said in Moscow that Kenya and Russia had agreed Kenyan nationals would no longer fight for Russia in Ukraine. After discussions with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, Mudavadi said the matter involved the welfare of Kenyans in Russia, particularly those linked to what Russia calls its special operation. He stated that Kenyans would no longer be enlisted through the Russian Ministry of Defense and that no further recruitment would take place. Mudavadi added that consular services would be organized through proper diplomatic channels for Kenyans who required assistance. He emphasized that Kenya did not want its partnership with Russia to be defined solely through the Ukraine conflict, saying the relationship between Nairobi and Moscow was broader than the special operation agenda. Lavrov said Kenyan citizens who joined the Russian army had voluntarily signed contracts. A Kenyan intelligence report presented to lawmakers in February indicated more than 1,000 Kenyans had been recruited to fight on Russia's side in the war in Ukraine, 5 times higher than previous estimates. Politicians say rogue officials colluded with traffickers. Now, in Somalia's remote Al-Miskad mountains, fighters using drone surveillance as operations continue against militants who established bases in the region. Around 500 soldiers are stationed at a northern base where fighters monitor valleys and caves believed to be sheltering between 50 and 60 militants. The area once hosted only small nomadic communities before IS established a foothold after losing ground in Syria and Iraq. In April 2025, General Michelle Langley of United States of America Command told the U.S. Congress that ISIS controlled its global network from Somalia. The United States has supported Somalia's campaign by carrying out airstrikes against insurgents, including dozens of attacks during 2025. ISIS Somalia, founded by Somali national Abdul Qadir Mumin, previously forced al-Shabaab from parts of Puntland's mountains and became a financial and training hub for the group's wider network. Now, Madagascar's transitional leader, Michael Randrianirina, who has appointed Mamitiina Rajoelinarisson head of the country's financial intelligence unit as the prime minister following the sudden dissolution of the government. In a statement issued by the presidency, Rajoelinarisson, who has led the anti-money laundering agency SAMIFIN since 2021, was tasked with leading a new cabinet. A former senior gendarmerie officer and career civil administrator, he replaces Herin Salama Rajoelina-Rivelo, who was dismissed when the cabinet was dissolved unexpectedly. Rajoelina-Rivelo had been appointed shortly after Randrianirina assumed power in October during protests that forced former President Andry Rajoelina to flee the country. Speaking during a ceremony at the presidential palace in Antananarivo, Randrianirina said that the country required bold decisions in a critical moment and described Rajoelina-Risson as a man of integrity who could not be bought with money. Now, Randrianirina rejects claims that his rise to power amounted to a coup, stating that the Constitutional Court legally transferred authority to him. He has promised a 2-year transition involving nationwide consultations, the drafting of a new constitution, and presidential elections planned for 2027. Now, a former elite police officer has been charged with the murder of a whistleblower who testified during a major police corruption inquiry in South Africa. Matipandile Soteni, aged 41, appeared in court accused of killing Marius van der Merwe in December last year. Soteni allegedly shot van der Merwe in full view of his family in a case that triggered national outrage. Van der Merwe had testified before the Matlanga Commission as Witness D, where he implicated police officials in the torture and murder of a robbery suspect. His testimony exposed alleged corruption within local policing structures and led to the suspension of several officers he named. The commission was established by President Cyril Ramaphosa after a senior police officer alleged organized crime groups had infiltrated the government, leading to the suspension of Police Minister Senzo Mchunu, who denies links to criminal gangs. Police say Soteni was the alleged hitman, while another suspect, Viandre Pretorius, who drove the car used in the drive-by shooting, later killed himself. Soteni also faces charges of attempting to kill van der Merwe's wife and children. The case was postponed to 25 March for a formal bail application. Now, heavy raiding that began on Saturday evening triggered flooding across several parts of Nairobi, disrupting traffic and prompting emergency rescue operations across the Kenyan capital. According to the Kenya Red Cross, floodwaters affected areas including Parklands, the Central Business District, Gong Road near Ngando, Lower Kabete, Kibera, Kilimani, South B, Kawangare, Langata, Lavington, Eastleigh, and Riruta. The intense downpour also caused the Nairobi River and Gong River to overflow, leading to riverine flooding in nearby neighborhoods. Rescue teams reported multiple incidents where residents became trapped by rising water levels. In one operation, aqua rescue teams saved 11 people from a marooned matatu along Bunyala Road, while 2 children were rescued from a flooded house in Kilimani. Floodwaters also created severe traffic congestion on major routes, including the Nairobi Expressway near the Museum Hill exit, Limuru Road, Bunyala Road, Lusaka Road, and sections of the CBD. Those have been our top stories on Africa Good Morning. Shortly, we'll be joined by Talent Gore as she delivers the Zimbabwe report.
This is Generation C, where high school stories come alive. It's youth-led, youth-driven, and all about real voices from real schools. From standout learners and aspiring teachers, to school culture, talent, vibes, and everything that makes each school unique. No scripts, no filters, just authentic moments and big energy. Catch Generation C every Friday at 12 p.m. on DSTV channel 285 and GOTV channel 25. Missed it? No stress. Watch anytime on 1up2 under My Zone TV. Generation C, made by the youth for the youth. This is where your school gets the spotlight.
It's time for us to be joined by our correspondent in Zimbabwe, Talent Gore. Talent, wamkase.
Mamkase Afrika.
Tamuka Hedu, we certainly hope that the network stabilizes as we continue with the broadcast. Now, we know about the tabling of Constitutional Amendment Bill number 3, which has so far started gaining some modicum of momentum, and this bill seeks to extend the president's rule, also including changing elections from a popular vote to having the president decided by the parliament, amongst other different changes. Now, the retired army generals of Zimbabwe from the liberation struggle have an issue with this, and they are calling for a referendum. Talent. We seem to be having an issue there with connection. Can you hear me, Talent? All right. We're having an issue there. We're going to go straight into Talent's stories, and hopefully she can join us. We do understand that there has been several network disruptions between here and Zimbabwe. But let's get straight into that story, because she did deliver them to us prior to the broadcast. A group of retired Zimbabwean... Okay, I hear Talent is back. Talent, are you with us? All right, we'll continue now. A group of retired Zimbabwean military generals and liberation war veterans has called for a national referendum to decide on proposed constitutional amendments, intensifying debate over the country's governance direction. The former commanders argue that the planned changes, reportedly linked to extending presidential terms and altering key provisions of the constitution, require direct public consent rather than parliamentary approval alone. Their intervention is significant, given the historic political influence of Zimbabwe's military elite, particularly in shaping leadership transitions. The call underscores growing unease among sections of the ruling establishment and liberation movement veterans, who insist that constitutional legitimacy must rest on the will of the people. Analysts say the demand signals fractures within traditional power bases that have long backed the current administration. Government officials have yet to formally commit to a referendum, maintaining that constitutional processes are being followed. However, pressure is mounting as civic groups, legal experts, and opposition figures echo calls for broader consultation. The unfolding debate places Zimbabwe at a critical constitutional crossroads. And this is, without a doubt, the biggest conversation in Zimbabwe. Emerson Mnangagwa has been a part of the ZANU-PF Central Committee for decades. And the ZANU-PF Central Committee has essentially, for lack of better terms, always anointed the next leader, in spite of the vote. Of course, the vote may or may not confirm it. And so members of this committee have started to leave the common thinking line, so to speak. We first saw it with Comrade Geza, who did pass away this year, who essentially was calling for Mnangagwa to step down, and that has not been heard of before. And what also had not been heard of before was the retired army generals saying that they want a referendum. All right, is Talent with us?
Hi, Ashwin.
All right, Talent, please go straight into the next story about the president's car.
Yes, a businessman and presidential aspirant Kudakwasheta Gray paid a staggering 1.8 million United States dollars at a charity auction in Harare on Thursday for President Emerson Mnangagwa's first car, an Aston Martin 1300 that the president drove as a law student at the University of Zambia. Tagwire immediately donated it back to the University of Zambia Scholarship Trust, which supports Zimbabwean students at the institution. The auction, which sold Mnangagwa's car, raised over 2.5 million United States dollars in total. Tagure, who is under sanctions from both the United States and the United Kingdom, built a multi-billion-dollar business empire on state contracts awarded without competitive tender. He also held a fuel sector partnership with Singapore's Trafigura until sanctions ended the arrangement. Washington has accused Tagure and other Zimbabwean elites of derailing economic development through corruption, saying he leveraged relationships with senior officials to secure state contracts and preferential access to hard currency while supplying those same officials with luxury goods, including expensive vehicles. The businessman was recently elevated to ZANU-PF Central Committee amid reports that he harbors presidential ambitions. His advisors believe he stands to be the primary beneficiary of the planned constitutional amendments that would scrap the requirements for a presidential to win a popular vote, replacing it with a vote by MPs sitting as an electoral college.
All right, Talent, we will definitely be keeping an eye on that story. How much conversation has been surrounding the price of this vehicle? We do know that Robert Mugabe's old vehicle was also auctioned at some point in time. Where's the money going?
Well, the money is said to be going to the President's Scholarship in Zambia. Apparently, there's a scholarship that supports university students who study at the University of Zambia, where President Emerson Mnangagwa actually supports the students through the scholarship. So that money is said to have been donated to that scholarship, to the ED Unza scholarship. So that is where the money is going. But a lot is being said in regards to the vehicle. Some are saying that the vehicle is not President Emerson Mnangagwa's, but rather it was bought somewhere else, and yeah, it was auctioned as his, but it's not his. So a lot is just happening around that, especially given the money that it was sold for. It was sold for 1.8 million, which is a lot, 1.8 million United States dollars. So there are conversations around the price of that car and also the originality of that car as well.
Yes, Talet, and I mean, I also understand, the president spent a lot of time in Zambia. In fact, I can quote him as saying that I am president of Zimbabwe now, but I was raised in Zambia. So his attachments to the real Africa are quite palpable. We move on to your last story. Some concern because Kariba Dam levels are rising.
Yes, and amid that, Zimbabwe is also set to experience heavy rains in the coming days, raising the risk of flooding in parts of the country, according to the regional weather update. In its latest report released recently, it says that northern and eastern Zimbabwe are among the areas expected to receive significant downpours next week as the weather systems intensifies over much of the southern Africa. And there are concerns of flooding, flash flooding during that time. And meanwhile, that is happening. The Kariba Dam, the Zambezi River, has reported an improvement in the hydrological outlook for the Kariba catchment, with water level in the Kariba Reservoir gradually rising. The current water level in the Kariba Reservoir is at 477.74 meters above sea level, with usable live storage standing at 15.57%, equivalent to 10.8 billion cubic meters of unusable water. This reflects an improvement compared to the same date in 2025, when the reservoir stood at 476.93 meters above sea level, with usable water storage of 9.8%.
All right, Talent. So we'll certainly be monitoring that situation, and we are so grateful for such a comprehensive Zimbabwe report.
You're welcome, and thank you very much for having me.
It's always good to have you on Africa. Good morning. So those have been our stories on the show, save for our economic news story, which we're going to dive into right now. Africa is emerging as a potential source for rare earth minerals for the United States after reports indicated that the U.S. defense stockpile holds only about 2 months' worth of these critical materials. The shortage has gained urgency as the war with Iran intensifies, increasing demand for resources used in advanced military systems. Rare earth elements are essential components of technologies such as missile guidance systems, fighter aircraft, radar platforms, and secure communications infrastructure. China currently dominates global processing and export of many of these strategic minerals, giving it significant leverage over Western defense supply chains. Export restrictions on certain dual-use minerals have raised concerns about the resilience of U.S. military inventories during prolonged conflicts. As Washington seeks alternative supply sources, attention has turned to Africa, where several countries possess large reserves of strategic minerals. The Democratic Republic of Congo produces more than 70% of global cobalt, while Zimbabwe holds major lithium reserves. Namibia and Tanzania are advancing rare earth mining projects, and Botswana recently announced the discovery of a deposit believed to contain all 15 rare earth elements. Those have been all our stories on Africa. Good morning. Watch us on DSTV 285, GOTV 25, 1up2.com, Network Media Hub, and NTVAFRIKA.MY.NA, as well as NTV Africa on YouTube. Keeping in mind that Africa is with a K. We return tomorrow, as Rorisa Mokojwe says, Dumelang from Botswana, with the Botswana Report, straight from Gaborone. And as always, we'll be bringing you the potent stories stemming from the beautiful African continent. We leave you now with the economic indicators. My name is Ashwin Berry. Swera Jaganaka.